Good morning. You are watching KBC Channel 1 and are in time for live proceedings from the National Assembly. This Wednesday, 8th day of August 2018. And in a short while, we shall be linking up with members of the National Assembly for their traditional Wednesday morning sitting. It is a sitting that is reserved for private members' bills and motions. And as such, this morning, we have 4 motions and a bill lined up for debate. As soon as the sitting gets underway, members shall proceed to put the question to a motion sponsored by Honorable Owen Baya, Member of Parliament, Kilifi North Constituency. It seeks the revival of the cashew nuts subsector in the country. Motion debated at length last Wednesday, and one based on the premise that agriculture is the mainstay of the Kenyan economy, contributing to food security and employment and sustainable livelihoods for rural households, and also noting that cashew nuts are mainly grown in the coastal region of Kenya, producing about 10,000 metric tons of nuts, valued at 264.9 million shillings, and that this particular region has, or rather Kenya in general, has potential to produce more than 63 metric tons, valued at 1 billion shillings. And you do know that food security is one of the key pillars in the 4-pillar developmental agenda of the government. Also expected continuation of debate. There's just 12 minutes left of it, on a motion seeking establishment of a national rugby union stadium in the country and high-performance centers of excellence in every region, sponsored by nominated Member of Parliament Gideon Keter. And this particular motion will be discussed as amended. The word rugby union was, or rather is, proposed for deletion, so that it just remains as National Rugby Stadium. And this is to ensure that there is establishment of high-performance centers to develop sporting talent that is quite abundant, especially in the grassroots, and just to ensure that young persons or people who are developing their sporting talent have an avenue through which to exhibit their capabilities. Kibwezi East Member of Parliament, Honorable Jessica Mbalu, last week moved her motion on construction of post-trauma care facilities for survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. And this morning debate is expected to kick off proper on that. And these centers, she is proposing that they be set up to ensure that they are better equipped to offer rehabilitation services to victims of gender-based violence, including sexual violence, and that based on the argument that every person does have a right to freedom and security, and therefore should not be subjected to any form of violence, either in public or even in private. And it is a motion just geared towards ensuring the protection of women who do play quite a crucial role in society. Kiminini Member of Parliament, Honorable Chris Omalwa, has a bill, the Constitution of Kenya Amendment number 2 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 5, that proposes to amend Articles 101, Clause 1, Article 136, Clause 2A, 177 1A, and 181 of the Constitution of Kenya. And this is for the purposes of changing the existing date of the general election for members of Parliament, the President, Member of the County Assembly, and the county governors and deputy governors from the second Tuesday of August in every 5th year to third Monday of December in every 5th year. And his argument is that a new date, a December date, for a general election will be more favorable to the country, given all circumstances, Key among them being that December is usually the Christmas season. There's that long holiday after schools are closed for a long vacation, and most members of the public, or rather most voters, therefore do have some time to engage in this constitutional right of picking their leaders. This one is just a bill to ensure that crucial events or activities such as national examinations or even the general school calendar is not interrupted, and also to just facilitate the organization of a fresh election or even a runoff in case those general elections are invalidated. Honorable Mishi Juma Mboko, Member of Parliament Likoni, has a motion that is still pending before the House on establishment of special needs primary and secondary schools in every constituency, based on the fact that the Constitution of Kenya guarantees free and compulsory basic education for every child, and more so for persons living with disabilities. There is a need for them to have access to education facilities that ensure that they get the very best that can be offered in learning environments, and to ensure that their integration in normal learning activities is as seamless as possible. All that coming your way this morning. A broadcast brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in conjunction with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. You can also access it live on YouTube, where it is available on live stream as well as on...
And to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interest you've committed to our charge. Amen. Order, members. Order. 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 We do not seem to have attained the required quorum, and therefore I order the bell to be rung for 10 minutes.
The Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Moses Cheboy, has just ordered that the quorum bell be rung, and this is because currently there are less than 50 members in the House. It is the minimum required in order for business to be transacted in the National Assembly. And so we have members, of course, of the House leadership rallying their colleagues to come into the chambers this morning and take part in this particular proceedings. Just a brief recap of yesterday afternoon, where members did deliberate at length on a report on the inquiry into forest resource management and logging activities in the country that was presented by the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources, chaired by Honorable Kareke Mbiuki, and which has made a number of recommendations. Members also did sit in a committee of the whole House, and they made amendments to the Land Values Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of the year 2018, that speaks to the Land Registration Act and the Prevention, Protection and Assistance to Internally Displaced Persons and Affected Communities Acts. And it is a piece of legislation intended to provide for assessment of land value index in respect to compulsory acquisition of land in the country. It is meant to standardize and harmonize the value of land, and this is for the primary purpose of determining what will be charged in the form of land rent, land rates, the stamp duty on conveyance of land, and compensation of expropriated land, amendments or even allowing for land rates, the rent, the stamp duty, the predictable compensation, and other subjective valuations. And it is just legislation intended to regulate the long and protracted process of compulsory acquisitions and to just ensure that all compensation agreements are adhered to. And the putting of the question to the Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of the year 2018, also discussed yesterday, an omnibus that contains quite a number, about 3 dozen laws that should be amended. Quorum bell is still ringing, and members of the National Assembly using this time to catch up, chat a little bit, deliberate on what they are currently engaged in, which is primarily legislation, as their colleagues continue to stream in, clocking in a new electronic biometric system that was installed and started being used in this session. The standing orders approved by the members themselves has set the minimum number of members for a quorum as 50. And as per those standing orders, this particular bell will ring for the stipulated duration, which is about 10 to 15 minutes, after which the Speaker, and in this case the Deputy Speaker, has the discretion to give direction on what will happen next. Once they do attain that required number, they have a number of motions before them this morning. The first is the revival of the cashew nut subsector in Kenya, sponsored by Kilifi North Member of Parliament Honorable Owen Baya. And it's really, they will be making a decision on this. They already concluded a debate on it. And it is one, if approved and of course implemented, will see the revival of the cashew nuts industry that is quite...
Business will proceed. Order, members. Order. Order, members.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers. Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements. Order number 8, motion, revival of the cashew nut subsector in Kenya. Question to be put.
Order, members. Order, Honorable Member for Mosop. On this particular one, it had been dispensed with, and what remained was for the question to be put. And I proceed to put the question, which is that aware that agriculture is the mainstay of the Kenyan economy, contributing to food security and employment of rural households. Further aware that the cashew nuts are mainly grown in the coast region of Kenya, producing about 10,000 metric tons of nuts valued at Kenya shillings 264 million, recognizing that Kenya has a potential to produce more than 63 metric tons valued at over 1 billion, noting that the subsector has potential to create many employment opportunities through value addition and fetch exchequer millions of shillings through exports, deeply concerned that the cashew nut farming in Kenya has continued to face challenges, among them low producer prices, which has seen many of the farmers cut down their trees. Appreciating that Kilifi, a region at the coast of Kenya, used to be a major producer of cashew nuts in the 1980s, but the production has since dwindled, which has led to, among other things, fraudulent sale of Kilifi cashew nut factory, loss of livelihood of farmers, and subsequently increased poverty levels. This House urges the government to put in place measures to revive cashew nut industry in the country. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable, yeah, what is it? I mean, what is out of order? I know this is your, this was your motion.
Yes.
Do you think it has just passed?
Yes, it has passed, but just one important thing, Mr. Speaker.
What is this?
One, to thank the members. When this motion came last week, I wasn't around, and I didn't have opportunity to respond.
What is it again you are saying, Honorable? Yeah, because I'm looking at you. You know, you've raised a point of order.
Yes.
Now,
My point of order
is
is
no specific point of order that is used to thank members.
Yes, I would like
why is it you didn't thank members when
I did not thank members, but I want to use this opportunity to say thank you very much to the members. And also inform the House that we have had discussion with the governor of Kilifi, that after this passes, then we'll bring all counties that are growing cashew nuts to do the bill. And I want to invite other counties, especially Tharaka Nithi, that has started growing cashew nuts, to come on board.
Okay,
so that
okay. Now, you have
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
You are out of order, of course, but you are completely out of order. But because what you have done, Honorable Bayer, is to actually sneak in responding to members at the point which the matter has already been dispensed with. So, and in any case, members, whenever we raise on a point of order, let us specify the specific standing orders that has been violated. But since yours was not anything that was against, I mean, if it is just thanking, you have already thanked the members. So we can proceed and do other things. Proceed. Next order. And before we go to the next order, let me recognize in the Speaker's Gallery, Kapkenda Girls High School from Keio South, Elgeyo Marakwet County. Now, and also in the Speaker's Gallery, we have a delegation of clergy from the African Independent Church of Kenya, led by Bishop Macharia Muhia. He is a bishop of Nakuru West Diocese of the Independent Church. We also have Reverend Joseph Karuku, Reverend James Karioki, Reverend Deacon Joseph Mwangi, Moses Njuguna, John Waweru, Deacon Wilson Ngugi, Deacon Hosea Muya, and Pastor John Muhia. You know, honorable members, it's not normal for us to read out names of the members who are in the Speaker's Gallery, but I am informed that this is the anniversary of elections. So, members, I'm sure you might have forgotten, it is on 8th of August that you are elected. And I'm told the clergy are here to bring their blessings. I hope, and maybe more than that is they come from Kuresoi North constituency. I need not to say anything more. Now, I hope the leader of majority will next year bring imams to also bring their blessings. And then, you know, we'll go like that. I mean, we are happy to receive clergy. And on the public gallery, we have Bishop Muge Memorial School from Mosop in Nandi County. And I see their member seated pretty well there. We have Stone Town Academy from Lamu East, Lamu County, and St. Clair's Primary School, Sigowit, Kericho County. They are here, of course, to know what we do as a National Assembly. Okay, proceed.
Order number 9, motion establishment of a national rugby union stadium in the country, and high-performance centers of excellence in every region. Question on the amendment to be put.
Yes, for members, honorable members, I want this to be very clear. We are not putting question on the motion. The motion has a balance of 12 minutes. So maybe a member or two will have an opportunity to speak to it. What we are putting the question on is a motion, is an amendment. An amendment. And this particular amendment, just to refresh the members' minds, is that the motion be amended by deleting the word union appearing immediately after the phrase stadium in the country, just for members to keep updated. So I will put the question, which is that the motion be amended by deleting the word union appearing immediately before the phrase stadium in the country. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Now, we will be therefore debating the motion as amended for the remaining 12 minutes. And then we will have the mover to respond. Now, let's see which members. I see Honorable Pukose, top on the list. You want to speak to it? I hope you will have a few minutes so that another member can ownership and management of the rugby union. That's Mr. Gangla and his team. They are in the house, of course, to participate in these specific proceedings and specifically to monitor the motion that is being moved by Honorable Keter. I'm told also Honorable Keter was once a rugby, I'm not so sure whether he was a rugby fan or a rugby player. Proceed, Honorable Keter. Honorable Keter, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to donate 2 minutes to Mr. Honorable Olwoch to contribute, then I'll reply.
I would have been very reluctant, but looking at the size of Honorable Olwoch, he either could have been a former rugby player himself or his son could be. Proceed, Honorable Olwoch, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to say thanks to Honorable Keter for giving me this chance. And indeed, this motion is timely. There's a need for Kenya to have, in all constituencies, rugby centers. And indeed, when I see rugby leaders here, I know that this matter is serious. We have had discussions with them, Mr. Speaker, and I know this is necessary. I stand here, Mr. Speaker, 42 years ago I played rugby. But now, I'm the proud father of one of the best rugby coaches in Kenya, Curtis Olago, who is a friend of the guys who are here, and who has been coaching KCB for the last 6 years and excels every year. So even me and my family, rugby is very close to our hearts. And I support Honorable Keter's motion that we should have these centers in every constituency. In fact, last week, Mr. Speaker, my son had to go for high-performance training in Cape Town because we don't have any around here. He's just back in the country a few weeks ago. His friends here know that. And this motion is timely. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
So now the time is yours, Honorable Keter. No more donations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I would like to thank the House, the members who overwhelmingly supported this motion, this proposal. And it cut all the ages, all political parties, and it showed a good picture out there that this House is mindful about the development of our young men. I would like to also say that through this, we are going to actually produce a lot of sportsmen in the country, and then we're also going to eliminate a lot of challenges many young people have been facing, especially young people traveling from one region to another region looking for a facility. And we know the challenges young people are facing, especially in this era of a lot of unemployment. And in the past, we've had a lot of young men going to other countries only to look for opportunities to participate in sport or migrating to other. and other areas. Archery is a simple sport. If young people are given facilities, they are going to participate and are going to win and put Kenya in the map of Kenya. So I would like to thank you, members, thank the House, and I hope this will be considered in the next budget, because we don't want just proposal that we just make proposal in the House and they lack funding. So we will follow it up with funding and push and ensure that they are recognized. And before I conclude, Mr. Speaker, I would like to send condolence to one of the sportsmen, Nicholas Bate, who put Kenya in the map as one of the champions who won 400 meters. He died this morning, and I am saddened by that. It was one of the many young people I was fighting for in this House, and I know the entire sportsmen are mourning for his death, and I would like to wish the community, the family, God peace, and may his soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Very well. Our condolences also. And let me take this opportunity, surely, to really thank and congratulate Honorable Keter, because he's been very active in matters that he was nominated for. As you are aware, I think on Friday, is it Friday, he'll be having youth, handling matters youth here. He's been doing quite some work in youth, and it's good to really recognize that. So let me take this opportunity to congratulate you. So I will proceed and put the question now that we have completed this, looking at the House. We have quorum to transact this particular business, and therefore I will put the question, which is that aware of the economic, health, and social cultural benefits of sports, further aware that Section 4 of the Sports Act 2013 provides functions of Sports Kenya, which includes, among others, establishment, management, development, and maintenance of sports facilities, recognizing that the rugby in the country has experienced tremendous growth and is one of the fastest growing sporting activities in the country, appreciating that the Kenya Rugby Union management has been instrumental in spearheading the sports regionally and internationally, thus setting the country as a rugby powerhouse globally, deeply concerned that despite various achievements and international glory that the sport has brought the country, there is not a single national rugby stadium. This House urges the national government to establish a national rugby stadium in the country and a high-performance centers of excellence in every region with a view of providing quality sporting infrastructure, promoting the sport, and providing facilities where talent scouted can be nurtured. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of our contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 10, motion, construction of post-trauma care facilities for survivors of sexual and gender-based violence.
Very well. This one is the one by Honorable Jess Kambalu. We are resuming debate on this particular one. And we have an hour and 35 minutes. Members will be speaking for 5 minutes, isn't it? 5 minutes. For members, it's good for you to plan yourself so that we don't cut you before you either support or oppose it. Now, I will start with Honorable Mutua Barasa. That's top on the list here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity also to support this motion. This is a very important motion, Mr. Speaker, because we are fully aware that these people, they suffer and they take time to recover. And setting up these trauma centers will assist them recover, collect themselves, and move forward, Mr. Speaker. And I think it's also very important, while supporting this motion, to note that we need to be really serious in terms of implementing whatever this House approves. That's the only way we can give Kenyans value and also appreciate ourselves, because coming up with such a motion, debating, it requires a lot of thinking, a lot of research, and the only way to complement such efforts is to ensure that whatever we approve from the Speaker is be able to be implemented. Because approving is one thing, supporting is one thing, and implementing are two different things altogether. And I think this motion, it's a motion whose time has come. We have a lot of victims who are struggling to recover from such criminal activities of rape, of molestations, gender-based violence, Mr. Speaker. Every day on the social media, you see people being abused, and such centers will also assist these victims to recover much more faster. And we also ask some other security agencies as well, as we try to assist the victims to recover. The criminal elements, the criminal gangs who perpetuates these heinous acts must also be prosecuted, Mr. Speaker. And for this very reason, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion. Thank you very much.
Let's have Honorable Manzo. 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to support this very important motion. Mr. Speaker, only recently there was a lady assaulted in my constituency, and the assaulter disappeared, Mr. Speaker. And I had to look for young men to look for him, and later found that he had escaped to another constituency, was arrested. When he was charged in court, he pleaded guilty, and he's being sentenced today in Makueni Law Courts. Mr. Speaker, once this lady is out of hospital, Mr. Speaker, depending on what happens in court today, you know the case of assault, causing grievous bodily harm, one can easily get out on a fine or just a few a jail term, or can appeal, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, once an assaulter like that is free, then he can go back to the same act, and the life of that particular victim will be in danger. So it is important that we have a victim protection center, probably per constituency or per county, or even you can begin by the regions or so, the former provinces, such that women who, or men who go through such traumas, through gender violence or violence emanating from a home, or any other source of violence, or somebody who's feared for his life, they have a place they can get protected. There have been several acts of parliament which have passed in this, and while the mover was moving the motion, cited all of them. The Female Genital Mutilation Act, we have the protection, we have also the Witness Protection Act, Victim Protection Act. We've got all manner of acts, even gender-based sexual offenses, you know, acts and all that. And all these victims, even when someone gives evidence in court, at times, they are at a risk. They need some protection. When one has been assaulted or is in an abusive home, they need some protection. And as I've said, this applies to both men and women. It is not even children, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, setting up these centers is important, and we should implement it under all these acts which we have already passed as a House. It is actually at the tail end. It's just a matter of the House making provisions for budget in future, and the relevant government agencies beginning the plans so that we can have Kenyans protected who suffer from trauma, and especially now with what we have seen in the case of Nzomo from Makueni, among other cases which have not been reported, Mr. Speaker, so that we are able to fulfill the promise in our Constitution that every human should feel safe in the country they live in, and that, and especially Kenya. And this is also not a matter of local arrangements.
There is no crisis of this sexual harassment. And Mr. Speaker, recently we have passed some other centers that we want to put up. And if we just create centers which we are not able to implement, it will be a very big problem. And to myself, I want to say it is very important. If maybe this center, if there is the trauma in this sexual harassment, we have hospital which we can create a department there. Instead of creating so many centers which the country is not able to implement. And Mr. Speaker, it is not true to say that only sexual harassment traumatizes people. If you look at what happened in the bus who are carrying the student just 2 days ago, those parents are traumatized. And we don't say, let's create a center because of this one particular incident. It is necessary that we have this center, but not as a center that stand alone, but it will be a department in the even health. So, Mr. Speaker, I do not support this center because of that reason I have given. Those departments can help the victim, and we have laws to take care of those people who are doing those kind of things. But if it is the issue of the victim, let the victim be helped in the department within our hospitals, because we cannot manage all these centers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I oppose.
Now, next, let's have Dr. Tekla Tum.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support this motion on the establishment of post-trauma centers in the country. We know quite a number of women and children have been sexually abused in the country. Recently, last week, there was a woman who was murdered by the husband in my ward where I'm staying. She was abused. We remember Moi girls and many other cases. We notice men and women are rotting in their homes. There is no one who is assisting them after abuse. These trauma centers will be centers where they are counseled, where they are given psychological treatment. We know very well in other countries like US, there are many centers who attend to women and men who have been abused. It is not a matter of going to hospital, and it is done in 1 hour. As a social worker, I know treatment of somebody who has been abused costs for 6 months up to 1 year. So there is need to develop a post-trauma centers. I know of some women who have been sexually abused. Some of them have said they are not going to get married. So it is not a joke, it is not a matter which can be even addressed in 1 hour. It is a serious problem. Our boys have been sodomized, and we need counseling. We need treatment. So there are women who are rotting in their homes, but they have been abused, and they have no one to share with. You can go back to your parents. Your parents will tell you, just go back to your house. But this woman is just crying in, day out. They have no one to share with what they are going through. So we need these centers, and they should be established tomorrow, if not next week. The women in this country are really sexually abused. The boys are sodomized, and in our cultures, you don't share when you are abused. Honorable Speaker, we know there are laws in the land. We know there is Sexual Violence Act of 2006. We know there is Protection Act and what have you, but nothing is happening. So I support this motion. Thank you, Honorable Jessica, who introduced this motion. You are going to heal the women of Kenya who are crying in their homes. We need treatment. We need post-trauma counseling. We need healing and reconciliation. And no other person can do this apart from the social workers. No other person can do this apart from psychologists. The doctors only treat when they have been abused, when they are doing surgery, but they cannot treat their emotions, they cannot treat their arts, they cannot treat everything. So I support this motion, and I call upon the honorable ladies in this house, let's support this motion because our girls, our women are crying in their homes and nobody has listened to them. The doctors cannot do what is required. So I support 100%. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Kingola Macau, member for Mavoko.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the onset, I must congratulate the member for bringing this motion. Mr. Speaker, given the stress levels in the world, based maybe because of poverty levels, hard economic times, Mr. Speaker, we have seen not only gender violence, but some of the survivors are never lucky. They end up being killed. So, the establishment of such facilities, trauma centers, will actually help the victims getting education. Mr. Speaker, most of the Kenyans, most of the women and men don't understand how to conduct themselves when they are accosted. And Mr. Speaker, when we have such centers, citizens will be advised and educated on how to handle. Mr. Speaker, we have seen girls and boys raped, but they don't know how to handle it. Some of them wash even before they go to hospital. And Mr. Speaker, we have even seen in police stations where victims report, that's the beginning of trauma. But Mr. Speaker, with the establishment of such centers, it means there will be care, there will be support, and there will be counseling, Mr. Speaker, and actually treatment on time. Mr. Speaker, I agree with members that, true, even boys are being subjected to this. Recently, we have seen a video going viral, a lady kicking a man because of 200 shillings, and I have not seen reaction from the public like the one of Nzomo. So, Mr. Speaker, it's high time we treated gender equally, men and women, because we cannot say it's only women who are being subjected to this. We have seen boys sodomized left, right, center, even by the very people we trust with them. Priests, family members, Mr. Speaker, incest has risen. And I think it needs a culture change world over. Because, Mr. Speaker, we know, because I have seen even genital mutilation is included here. Mr. Speaker, we need education that some cultures must stop practicing them. Because, Mr. Speaker, we know once a woman has been genitally mutilated, Mr. Speaker, she never enjoys sex. And I think some of them, in fact, don't get married. So, Mr. Speaker, these trauma centers will actually advise even parents of such people because of their cultures that mutilating a woman's genital is a crime and abuse of our rights to enjoy sex, Mr. Speaker. So in such centers, Mr. Speaker, I am sure.
Even now, I don't want you to really use that word too many times, even if I know where you come from. Just proceed, Honorable Kingola.
Mr. Speaker, if you see most of the NGOs that are practicing on female genital mutilation, Mr. Speaker, it's because such ladies know what happens to them in their old age. It could look like it's a good culture once you are young, because it is a gateway to getting married. But Mr. Speaker, once you realize what you are missing, that's why you are seeing most ladies campaigning against that you are refusing to hear. However, Mr. Speaker, I am sure when these centers are established, and I propose in every village there must be, from the culture and actually means of health, there must be someone in every location to champion this. Because, Mr. Speaker, we have more than 50% of the victims who don't report, and they suffer in silence. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a motion which has come at the right time, and there's an idea whose time has come and we cannot avoid it. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy that this motion has come at a time like this. I congratulate Jessica. I know she comes from Makueni, where Nzomo actually made our community look like we are women battlers. I want to assure this House, Kamba men are one of the best men in this world, and it is known. We don't beat women, but I'm sure even the Bible says a jealous man knows no compensation. It could have been
I have not disconnected you because you said the Kamba men are good. I've only done it because your time is over. So I didn't disconnect you. It is your time that lapsed. You didn't see any warning, but okay, that is your 5 minutes. That's your 5 minutes. What else would you have wanted to say? You finalized on a high note. So let's give another member, Honorable Kingola. Now, Honorable Wetangula Wanyonyi, member for Westlands. Honorable Wanyonyi. Honorable, Honorable Nangabo. Honorable Nangabo. That will make a perfect match with Kingola.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa nafasi hii kuchangia kwa huu mjadala. Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kwanza nichukue nafasi hii nimshukuru Mheshimiwa Jessica kwa kuleta mswada mzuri ule unahusu watu wale wamedhulumiwa katika jamii. Na ni ukweli Mheshimiwa Spika kwamba wamama ama wanawake wamedhulumiwa sana kwa ajili wanatendewa unyama na wenzetu wa wanaume. Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka niseme ukikuja kwa area yangu unaona kwamba tuko na ADC, na hii ADC huwa inachukua watoto wetu haswa wale wenye wanatoka katika jamii maskini, na mwishowe badala ya kuwalipa fedha zile wamefanyiwa, unaona kwamba wanadhulumu hao watoto wakienda nao kwa njia ya kimapenzi na kuwaumiza. Na iwapo tutakuwa na centers kama hizi katika nchi yetu ya Kenya, itatusaidia kwa sababu wale wameathirika watapata nafasi ya kwenda katika senda hizo na waangaliwe na watibiwe tena. Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka niseme wiki 2 zilizopita nilikuwa na mzee wa mtaa. Ule alikuwa anafanya kazi yake vizuri, lakini kwa sababu wahalifu wale wako miongoni mwetu katika sehemu hiyo ya milimani, huyu mama pia alidhulumiwa na wakora wale waliingia katika nyumba yake. Unaona Mheshimiwa Spika, saa zingine umri ya mtu haiwezi kumkubali akitembea akisema kwamba mimi nimenajisiwa na mtu. Lakini iwapo kama tutakuwa na centers kama hizi, itakuwa ni nafasi mzuri ya mtu kwenda kujieleza kwamba wenda ikawa mimi nilidhulumiwa na mtu fulani. Nataka niseme Mheshimiwa Spika, pia ukiona katika jamii tuko na walemavu. Hawa walemavu wa kike wale wametulumiwa pamoja na hawa watu. Tusipokuwa na centers kama hizi itakuwa ni njia mbaya sana Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu wengine hawawezi kutembea wafike katika mahali hapo. Lakini iwapo tuko nazo na zimejulikana kwamba siko wazi, hata ule anataka kuokoa ule mlemavu, Mheshimiwa Spika, itakuwa ni rahisi sana, kwa sababu atajua kwamba kuna kitengo fulani kimetengewa hao watu wenye wameathirika katika jamii. Nataka niseme sisi pia katika nchi yetu ya Kenya, kulingana na katiba yetu, kila mmoja wetu ako na usawa na maisha yake, kuhakikisha kwamba pia analindwa kama Mkenya yoyote. Mheshimiwa Spika, vile Mheshimiwa amesema mahali hapa, mimi ninaona itakuwa ni jambo mzuri sana iwapo serikali itachukulia hii mswada iweke haya centers mara moja. Itatuokoa sisi pia na itaokoa wamama katika nchi yetu ya Kenya, na hata wataendelea kupata matibabu ya kuwawezesha hawa kutibiwa iwapo wamedhulumiwa katika jamii. Nashukuru sana Mheshimiwa Spika, na nishukuru dada yangu Mheshimiwa Jessica kwa kuleta mswada huu katika bunge hili, na ninaomba wenzangu pia tuungane pamoja na tumpatie support kulingana na hii. Na kwa hayo machache, asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Very well. Let's have Honorable Yusuf Halima. You probably will need to use the next microphone because that one doesn't seem to be coming out clearly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to put my voice to this very important motion brought to the floor of this House by Honorable Jessica Mbalu. Mr. Speaker, sir, gender-based violence affects all aspects of a woman's health. That is physical, mental, reproductive, and even behavioral health. It has led to death and depression, Mr. Speaker. We have seen that many of the victims require counseling and encouragement in order to carry on with their day-to-day life. Mr. Speaker, it is known that globally, 38% of all women murders are usually committed by intimate partners. Mr. Speaker, trauma can lead to alcohol abuse, permanent disabilities, and even injuries. As a woman, a female leader, a mother, a sister, Mr. Speaker, I would like to support this motion that trauma centers be established in every constituency, as stated by Honorable Mbalu. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Very well. Let's have Honorable Ambugu Ngunjiri. Missing. Let's have Honorable Serone Kipkorir. Also absent. Honorable, now I'll just go through as, where was he? You are consulting. Okay, you have the opportunity to contribute. Now, I had already placed the intervention intervention slot, and then I can, that would be fine now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I stand to support the motion on the establishment of trauma centers. I specifically think that as a community and as a society that is progressing through democracy, and I want to focus my attention on the issues of how we do our politics. When I think about gender-based violence, I think a lot of us tend to be biased towards violence against women. And I think even when you look through a lot of the acts that have been passed, a lot of them are biased towards women. And for me, I think the reason that society behaves well, most of us behave well in society, because there are consequences when you behave badly. The reason we, first and foremost, even as we look at the issue of having trauma centers set up, I think it's also going to be important for us to look back into the laws that exist on what we do with people who are involved in gender-based violence. One of the things that has happened, and I'm talking about cases that we have had, we had a couple of cases of ladies being attacked and beaten even on video in Nyeri some time back. And we will realize that a lot of the times, the results of those kind of attacks are for people to be asked to sit down and talk and sort it out. I think that removes the fact that that a lady has been assaulted, or a man has been assaulted for that matter. It doesn't matter that you will sit and discuss it and agree to move on. I think the reason and the need for this particular motion that has been brought to us by Honorable Mbalu, for people to then go back and look at what happened to the person who was assaulted, the loss of dignity, the embarrassment, the humiliation, can only be also sorted out, not just by the trauma center. I think it's also important for us to have laws that are actually implemented against the people who cause this assault. Because it is one thing to take that kind of person for therapy in a trauma center. But if the person who assaulted the victim, nothing happens to that particular person, I do not think you're going to be able to, or you're going to be able to say that you're actually dealing with the issue of gender-based violence if you're only dealing with it from the victim side. I think it is also important as a house to think very seriously about what actions have been taken against those people who have been involved in gender-based violence, the perpetrators of gender-based violence, so that as we take the victims for trauma, part of the trauma treatment, part of the feeling that you have actually been helped as a victim is also seeing action taken against the person who perpetrated that act. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion, but mine would also be to suggest that as we set up trauma centers across the country, we also need, as a house, to insist that action is always taken against those who perpetrate the violence against various people. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Now, since I've given members to my right, let me look for any member who is on the left here. They are way, way below. So we'll go to Honorable Mboko Hamis. And members, as I look out for members, then you should discover that even if you come here and find your name is on top, sometimes there are more considerations than just being top on the list. Like, for example, having to balance both sides. Honorable Mishi Mboko was number 7 on the line.
Watoto wetu wa kiume. Bwana Spika, sisi kama Kenya tuna zile agreement ama ile mikataba ambayo tumefanya pamoja na nchi nyingi katika ulimwengu ambao tunaiita mikataba ya kiulimwengu. Na mikataba hii sana imezungumzia vile ambavyo tutashiriki kama nchi kuweza kuangamiza dhulma za kijinsia katika mambo ya kinyumbani. Bwana Spika, tumeona wasichana wetu wengi wadogo ambao wameweza kunajisiwa, tumeona watoto wetu wa kiume wengi ambao wameweza kulawitiwa. Na mambo haya mara nyingi sana yanafanywa na watu ambao ni wakaribu katika familia zetu. Makazi haya wakati yatakuwa yametengenezwa, yatakuwa makazi ya kuweza kumfanya msichana yule, kijana yule wa kike ama kijana yule wa kiume ama hata mama ambaye ameweza kupata shida kama hii, kwanza aweze kukaa mahali ambapo anaweza kupatiwa ushauri, ambapo anaweza kupatiwa matibabu na ambapo anaweza kupatiwa mwelekeo wa kuweza kurudi katika hali yake ya kimaisha. Jambo hili Bwana Spika, wakati msichana ama kijana ameweza kunajisiwa ama kulawitiwa, inatia shauku sana na inatia hofu na inamfanya awe si mtu wa kawaida kama vile wengine. Pia kule ambako tunaishi, pengine katika mtaa ama katika kijiji, wakati tukio kama hilo limetokea, utapata kuna wengine watakuwa wanataka kumkejeli, kuna wengine watakuwa wanataka kumtukana, na kuna wengine pia watakuwa wanataka kumshukisha hadhi yake kwa kitendo kama kile. Kwa hivyo mtoto kama huyu ama mama kama huyu ama Mkenya yoyote ambaye amepatikana na matatizo kama haya, lazima awe katika sehemu ambayo ataweza kutulizwa roho yake na kutulizwa akili yake. Na jambo hili Bwana Spika, si gumu kulitekeleza katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Sasa hivi tuna kitengo cha pesa ambacho kinaitwa NGAF. Kwa lugha ya Kiingereza kwa urefu kinazungumzia na sikalivyozungumzia makao maalum ya kuweza kuangalia hawa ambao wamedhulumika wataweza kusaidika kwa njia gani. Vile vile kuna misaada mingi sana ambayo inatoka kwa mashirika yasiyokuwa ya kiserikali. kwa wale wafadhili wetu katika nchi yetu ya Kenya ambayo wanataka kusaidia katika dhulma kama hizi, lakini tunaona pesa hizi pia mara nyingi zinatumiwa kwa njia ya kiholela na pia hazimfikii yule mlengwa ambaye amepata dhulma kama hii. Wakati tutakuwa na makazi kama haya ambayo yatakuwa na mfumo maksusan ambao umepangiliwa na umewekwa pale, basi hata pesa hizi zinazokuja za kuweza kusaidia tatizo hili tutakuwa tunaweza kuzitathmini, kuzijua kweli kwa hakika zimesaidia yule mlengwa wa matatizo kama haya ambayo yamemkumba. Vile vile pia tukiwa na makazi kama haya tutaweza kujua zile takrimu za Kenya katika kila kaunti yetu ambazo tumeziona kutokana na tatizo kama hili. Sasa hivi kuna watoto wengi na vijana wengi ambao wanapata matatizo kama haya, lakini wamejificha, wamenyamaza kwa sababu hawajui watapata afueni wapi. Hawajui ni taasisi gani ambayo pengine ingeweza kuwasaidia kwa njia ambayo haitawaeka katika kupata aibu ama kuweza kukejeliwa. Kwa hivyo tukiwa na taasisi kama hizi ama makazi kama haya, tutaweza haswa kujua ile data ambayo watu wote ambao wamepata mambo kama haya ni kina nani. Na pia katika zile hospitali zetu ambazo tunazo za kitaifa ambazo pia zimetengeza sehemu ya kuangalia dhulma kama hizi na kuweza kusaidia wasichana kama hawa na vijana na hata kina mama ambao wameweza kupata shida kama hizi. Juzi tu tumeona jinsi msichana mmoja kule sehemu za Eastern, sehemu za Ukambani alivyokuwa akipigwa, akichapwa sana na mume wake. Na mama kama yule pengine akiweza kurudi katika familia ile kama bado hajapata ushauri.
Yeah, your time is over. So next will be Honorable Gakuya Wanjiko, member for Kasarani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise to support the motion by Honorable Jessica Mbalu that the construction of post-trauma care centers should be in all over the constituencies. For me, I will start by saying it happens to both genders. It's only that men are not able to express. But since women, we are termed as weaker sex, at least we shout more. I would recommend that in these centers, they should not only be able to collect the report, they should be able to assist in the cases, and also that is in the courts, and also to cater for the treatment. Because most of the time, like during the post-election violence, we have heard in the media, most women really suffered, and also due to lack of jobs, like from the constituency I come from, that is within the Eastlands, you find some youths don't have jobs, and you find most of the young people, they may be able to be assisted within even within the centers, so that they are aware that following the vice, it will not be the right thing. Also, the culture has really affected. You find some communities, they, when such violence happens, they are able to hide it. But when we have these centers, when we localize them within the district or within the constituency, it will be possible to ensure that none of them is left. So we should always ensure that we don't just start something, but make sure we mainstream it, we give it the resources it requires, and we be able to ensure that when a case is reported, we are able to report. We have enough facility, even before we set up within the constituency offices, we can even work closely with the gender offices within the district, so that at least we get the whole of the country, there is no such a vice which will be happening. So in my support to this motion, we should be able to ensure that we work with speed, because it is happening daily. I was watching news yesterday, and there was a lady who really suffered in the 2017 post-election violence. Though it was not that much, but people went to her home and they raped her, and she was left positive. And right now she's struggling alone. So we should make sure that even those people who are really suffering silently, we assist them. When we don't do that, our society is really going backwards. But if we ensure that we do and we put the correct measures and we do the right thing, you'll find that our country will not keep on suffering, because most women have really suffered and they have been suffering silently. And for women, it starts from young girls to middle-aged and also to the old one. We find we fit everywhere and we are really suffering. And also there are others who are not able to talk it out. But when we have a set out office out there where everybody can air out voices, even if it is in secret, we'll be able to ensure that the information which has been given to these offices is well safeguarded and is handed over to the right offices, and we'll be able to protect our women from this violence. I support.
Honorable Amin Kasim, Wajir East.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for giving me a chance to comment and give my contributions on the setting up of these trauma centers. This violence-based, gender-based violence is a common phenomenon that cut across all boundaries, be it geographical or race or class and religion. It has affected all societies that Kenya is composed of. The perpetrators that include people we know, the families we know, parents are included, caretakers are included, and even the law enforcers have not been spared in terms of inability to meet this kind of challenges. One thing we have realized is that the vulnerables, in terms of the percentage that we have had, is that nearly 70% of women are affected by this sexually based violence. And it's affecting our mothers, it's affecting our sisters, it's affecting our daughters. Men equally and young boys have not been spared, particularly on this. The consequences of gender-based violence is huge. It has affected societies, it has affected individuals. Even the future of individuals have rather been affected by this best. It's really devastating. One thing we have realized over the past few years is that the society has resorted to based violence. This violence is happening in our homes, in respective societies, happen everywhere. And we are not able to do much about it in terms of trying to give counseling and attention to these individuals who are affected by this gender-based violence. One thing that I have realized in my constituency and other part of my county is that young girls have rather been affected and they have nowhere to resort to. The law is not giving them justice equally. Because one thing we have also been able to realize that immediately they are taken to court or the police, even the kind of interrogation they undergo are very thorough that they cannot be able to approve. Even the stigma that is involved against this is equally very huge, and it's affected the future of young girls. One thing, the society is also not very supportive. One thing we have realized is that the society, instead of giving them the shoulder to cry on and giving them the support, it is rather stigmatizing. It's one thing that we have equally been able to realize. These are issues that are affecting our society. It's everywhere. It's in the media. It is in everywhere we have realized. And they have not been able to be given a chance so that they can be able to recoup their life and they are given the necessary attention. One thing, Honourable Speaker, is that the setting up of this trauma center in various constituencies will be able to alleviate, will be able to make these individuals who are affected to recoup. Even the disabled have not been spared in this. Even the young and the most vulnerable society in our society are affected by this, and they have nowhere to resort to. The fact that we can be able to establish a trauma center in every constituency will be able to alleviate the huge devastation that our young men and women are facing against perpetrators. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Very well. Let's have Honorable Onyonka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for you giving me this opportunity to discuss such an important matter. Mr. Speaker, first, I would actually like to thank our Madam Speaker, Honorable Jessica Mbalu, MP, who actually has worked tirelessly to bring this motion to the floor of this House. Mr. Speaker, the issue of trauma for the survivors of sexual and gender-based violence is a matter that in this country I think that we need to give the seriousness that it requires. To a large extent, if you look at the daily newspapers and listen to the radio, sometimes you wonder whether we are actually in this country, which is supposed to be a democratic country, which is supposed to be a country that believes in law, and which is a country that believes in equity, fairness, and justice. Mr. Speaker, it is important that we must recognize that women have a very critical role in our country because they are actually the custodians of our country. Our mothers and sisters are the ones who painfully take care of us by feeding us, who take care of us by making sure that we are taken care of when we are born, make sure that they're the ones who pass our culture from when we are young children until when we become mature adults. And to a large extent, because some of our cultural tendencies as an African country and as African people, Mr. Speaker, we have actually ended up mistreating our mothers and sisters and aunties. But I don't want this to be a matter that is exclusively geared or lined towards looking at this trauma only for women. We have also come to realize that, in fact, some of our youths, you remember recently, Mr. Speaker, we had this Muzungu man in Mombasa who ended up violating more than 25 youths, and these youths were actually boys. And it is true, we must be able to set up mechanisms which are going to deal with such trauma, because when the young people or when a woman is violated physically, mentally, psychologically, and whichever violation that takes place, once they are able to get out of that violation, then they need to be taken through the mental health management. They needed to be taken through their physical health management until they are able to be accommodated or they are able to be brought back into society so that they become useful members of society. Mr. Speaker, Kenya has always signed these international protocols, and I agree with Madam Balu. We have signed every protocol pertaining to this matter of sexual gender violence. And somehow, our police have not been trained to deal with this matter effectively. The agencies, the government agencies, sometimes trivialize this matter, Mr. Speaker. I think you've seen where sometimes when somebody goes to the police to report that they have been violated, the police will say, "Ni nini ilikufanya wewe ukaenda huko?" Such things. So we also need to go back and look at the structures we have, legal or otherwise. We need to look at the agencies which are supposed to deal with arresting the violators of these rights and make sure that this matter is dealt with effectively. I also want to support what my colleagues have said. Mr. Speaker, once the construction of these facilities is done, and I hope it will be done in every constituency, we must also make sure we have personnel that will deal with this matter. With those few remarks, I want to say I support this motion.
Member for Kirinyaga Central, Honorable Ambugu Munene.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving this chance to add my motion to this motion. And from the onset, I think I want to really congratulate Honorable Jessica Mbaro for bringing this timely motion. Mr. Speaker, it is true we are living in an interesting time where violence, gender-based violence, has become the order of the day. As I speak, I have in mind what happened within Kirinyaga County just about a week and a half ago, where a woman was actually forcibly circumcised, and we may say actually mutilated in the process by the husband, or the guys that she was too hot to handle. That woman came from my constituency, but got married in Moya constituency, and I think my friend here, Honorable Kabinka Wadayu can confirm that. As we speak, that woman is admitted at a normal hospital, Kalira Hospital, and the family members on Monday approached me on the ways of how we can settle this bill, because they are fearing that after the woman was mutilated and taken to hospital, the residents ranged the mother to the husband, and the husband has been arrested. So there's this question, even when she's released from the hospital, where is she going to go? And if there was a center like in Kirinyaga Central or in Moya for rehabilitation and taking care of this kind of situation, I believe we'll not be having that kind of problem. Mr. Speaker, the gender violence also should extend to the boy child or even to the men, because as I think everybody is aware, that is a matter of public knowledge, especially in Nyeri and even Kirinyaga. We have reached a situation whereby we have seen so many men, boy child, being battered by their wives. We need also, even as we establish these centers, we also need to take care of the aspect that also men or boy child can go there when this kind of scenarios occur. Because life is that the way things are, all these things will always be there. We always have people who do not want to live a state life. We always be having crooks, criminals, who think that the best thing they can do is to visit violence against the opposite gender. And much as we punish them, there are criminals to punish them. We need now to start focusing on what to do in support of the victims, so that they can also be rehabilitated back to society and be able to pick from where they were before these kind of things were visited on them. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support and thank the mover of this motion. Thank you.
Very well. Honorable Ibrahim Sahal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to congratulate the Honorable Jessica for bringing this important motion, which will help our community. Mr. Speaker, post-trauma disorder can appear in any age. It is more common in young adults. Mr. Speaker, women are twice as likely to develop a post-trauma PTSD, which is post-trauma stress disorder, as men are. Mr. Speaker, research has demonstrated an effective of such techniques as exposure of trauma therapy, helping patients confront painful memories and feelings. Mr. Speaker, post-trauma stress disorder may contribute to the development of many other disorders, such as anxiety disorder, major depression disorder, substance abuse, dependency disorders, alcohol abuse, conduct disorder, and mania. It causes serious problems, thus its early diagnosis and appropriate treatment of all paramount importance. I support.
Okay. Honorable Bishop Mwangaza Kawira.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'm honored to have this opportunity to support this motion by our sister, Honorable Jessica Mbaru, the construction of post-trauma care facilities for survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. Mr. Speaker, sir, gender-based violence against women and our girls still are done in Kenya, and the magnitude is so worrying. Mr. Speaker, sir, gender-based violence is a major threat to our development, especially in Meru County. This is occurring in our homes, so victims don't have a place that they can run to if it is happening in our homes. It is still happening in our schools, streets, places of work, and even our worship centers. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is a great need to construct such centers in every sub-county, not only in our counties. Mr. Speaker, sir, as we know, the perpetrators include our husbands, parents, family members, teachers, law enforcement authorities. We need a center where our girls, our women, our young boys can run to, because if we only say that they can run to our churches or our police stations or any other place, they might not need or they might not see the help that is needed for them. The perpetrators also don't spare our disabled girls. Mr. Speaker, sir, we need such centers in every sub-county, especially in Meru County. Study in Meru County shows that girls below 14 years are the most affected in our county. And this is from the parents who are raping our girls. Last week, we had a case that was in North Imenti. A man raped a 9-year-old girl. Unfortunately, the man was arrested. So my question is, can this young girl be taken back to home? We need a center where we can take these young girls after cases of rape and other cases, Mr. Speaker, sir. I want to support this motion by our sister Jessica by saying that in Meru, we have so many demonstrations, not because they need roads, not because they need water, not because they need construction of schools, but because fathers and men have raped so many young girls. Mr. Speaker, sir, we need such a center. And I'm very fortunate today that as the women rep of Meru County, I'm in the process of constructing one. And I also appeal to every women rep of this parliament to have such centers so that we can help our girls and the women down there in our villages. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Very well. Shall we now have Honorable Mohammed Hussein?
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwanza naunga mkono Mheshimiwa Jessica Mbalu kwa hoja hii kuileta, na hoja hii Mheshimiwa Spika naiunga mkono kwa sababu tutakapoweza serikali kutenga pesa hizi kujenga vituo hivi vya ushauri dhidi ya ubakaji na dhuluma za kijinsia, Mheshimiwa Spika, tunaona watoto wetu katika jamii wakiteseka sana. Wanapopata matatizo, wanapodhulumiwa, wanaporudi nyumbani, hata wengine akili huenda zikawaruka. Kuna wale ambao wamerukwa na akili dhidi ya ubakaji na kuweza kupoteza hamu ya kuishi katika jamii. Serikali itakapotenga fedha hizi na vituo hivi kujengwa, hao watoto wetu na kina mama wanaodhulumiwa kuweza kupata ushauri na kuondoa unyanyapaa katika jamii. Mtoto anapobakwa ama mama anapopigwa na mumewe kupita kiasi, yule mama anakuwa anajitenga katika jamii. Hata jamii inawatenga wadhulumiwa hao. Kwa hivyo vituo hivi vya ushauri vitawawezesha wao kwenda kupata ushauri mzuri na kuondoa ule unyanyapaa katika jamii, na wao kuweza kurudi kufanya kazi zao, shughuli zao kama kawaida. Hivi Mheshimiwa Spika, watakapoweza kupata ushauri, wanarudi, tunajumuika na wao pamoja katika jamii na kuendelea shughuli zao. Kwa hivyo naunga mkono hoja hii, serikali iweze kutenga fedha hizi na vituo hivi viweze kujengwa na waweze kupata huduma hii. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Honorable Washira Kabinga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute to this very important motion by our colleague, Jessica Baru. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about trauma, we all think about some physical sickness or look at it in terms of physical appearances, Mr. Speaker. But I want to say from the onset, trauma is about the heart and injured minds and hearts, or hearts and minds, Mr. Speaker. And so when we take victims to hospitals and assume that we will be able to go back to their normal lives, Mr. Speaker, we cheat ourselves. Victims of gender violence, and indeed many other violence, Mr. Speaker, including violences that come from attacks, terror attacks, for example, injuries, or crimes, Mr. Speaker, do cause a lot of trauma to the victims. My brother from Kirinyaga Central just mentioned one of them, where one of our very good ladies in Mwea was recently mistreated by her husband in the name of making her a woman. And Mr. Speaker, although this lady is being treated currently, she will come out and go back home, and we shall assume that all is well. But I can confirm, out of experience from my previous job, that all will not be well for this lady. She will not live a normal life until some serious counseling is done. And for this to be achieved, Mr. Speaker, we are saying that we need these centers. And as we look at our country, this is the way to go. We're having so many things that are causing trauma to our people. We're having so many crimes that are causing trauma to our young girls and boys. We're having poverty that is also causing trauma to most of our people. And so counseling centers, specialized counseling centers that will look at cases like gender violence is the way to go for this country. And to implement the requests of this particular motion, our government can simply use some of the existing facilities, Mr. Speaker. I am aware that in my constituency, we have a whole facility and our Mumo Correctional Center where they have more than 100 acres. So all the government would do is go to one area, do a center, and be a good center to serve not just Mwea, but the entire county, and also the neighboring counties that can also make use of that facility, Mr. Speaker. I want to urge, Mr. Speaker, that this should be taken seriously. I know we have passed so many motions in this particular house, Mr. Speaker, and all of them are pending. We urge the implementation committee to take some of these things seriously so that we can save our people from the sickness of their minds and hearts that they are living with, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, without even going further on this, I want to say that this is something that we can even include as part of our disaster management, because most of our victims of disasters, Mr. Speaker, end up being traumatized. So even as we budget for our disaster management, this is something we can budget for and have trauma centers in trauma counseling centers in every constituency. Certainly, Mr. Speaker, as I said, my constituency in Mwea is very ready, and we can have a center in Wamumuri Correctional Center without the government spending much resources. We have structures there that can easily be converted, and it becomes a regional counseling center for the Mount Kenya region. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I totally support.
Honorable Odege Boya, member for Nyatike.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Before I had my voice on this important motion, I would like to start by saying that we have enough laws in this country to curb the gender violence in our country. But the major challenge we are facing as a country is purely on implementation. When we talk about the police officers in our country, we talk about children officers in our country, we talk about gender officers in our country, you'll find all these officers we are talking about are entrusted to curb gender violence in our country. But when you look at the performance and you look at the weaknesses we are facing as a country and how our people are suffering, we have a lot as this House, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that all these laws are enforced so that we can see that our people are secured. We have amended so many acts in this Parliament, and we have enough laws to protect our children, we have enough laws to protect our women, we have enough laws to protect men who are currently being culpable to gender violence in this country. But because of laxity in implementation, that's why we are finding ourselves in the floor of this House with such kind of a motion today, which is very important and key. When you look at the situation we are facing in our country today, there are a lot of iniquity, and our people are suffering in silence. So allow me to support my colleague, Jessica, who has proposed the motion here today. If we can devolve this important facility up to the lowest level, you'll find those who are suffering in silence will find an opportunity of coming up and addressing themselves to be assisted. As we are talking currently, almost 90% of culprits are not reachable because all those facilities we are talking about are not within their reach. And you'll find, even if you tell someone to go and report to the police, they have already known the answers they are going to get from the other side. So the police officers, the children officers, those who are entrusted with the gender should be made more friendly so that they can be approachable and they can be in a position to help our people. We also, as the legislators, we have a responsibility to go out and sensitize the community and sensitize our people and make them be ready to come out and speak of ills which are facing them within the community. As we are talking today, you'll find there are a lot of fears, and our people are continuously being molested, and they are not ready to come out and share whatever is happening to them. Mr. Speaker, allow me to support. Thank you.
Next, we shall have Honorable Jiro Mochangi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to add my voice to this very good motion by Honorable Jessica Mbalu. And in the recent past, Mr. Speaker, we have seen in the media, in the newspapers, in WhatsApp groups, and all over, instances of women beating up men and also men beating up women. And I would say, Mr. Speaker, that violence anywhere against women hinders their progress. Violence anywhere against men, too, hinders their progress. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish to support this idea of having post-trauma care facilities in every constituency in the Republic of Kenya, so that those affected can get an opportunity to go and get listened to, get talked to, so that at least they can live their lives in full, Mr. Speaker. And as we construct these post-trauma care facilities, Mr. Speaker, we should also tell the gender departments in the various parts of this country that they should be more proactive in sensitizing our societies on the ills of gender-based violence, because you look around, Mr. Speaker, and see that it has become now a common practice in many parts of our country. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish to support this motion that we have post-trauma care facilities all over Kenya and in every constituency. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Shall we have Honorable Muri Fabian?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I rise to support this motion and congratulate Honorable Jessica Mbalu for coming with this very important motion for our community. Honorable Speaker, it is true that research shows that our people, there is a lot of population of high-tempered people, which gives an attitude which anytime they can engage in fights. Despite all this, we lack to have moral warfare recreational facilities within our community. We used to have even playgrounds within the estates, but now they are gone. Even in village areas, we don't have any facility or people can do recreational facilities. Also, when we go with guiding and counseling, it's only based with health status. Consultation are for only HIV, cancer people. But the question is, what about people from violence cases? We have Gender and Violence, Gender and Equity Commission. This motion is properly tasked to that commission. And they promise that they are going to spread the wings within the country. This is one motion we want them taking care and going within the country by doing extension of skill also by giving people guiding and counseling on how to live in society. Honorable Speaker, I want to give a scene scenario of what happened in Makueni. In Makueni recently we saw there was a fight within the husband by the name purported to be Zomo. Zomo will go to jail, the wife will go back being in trauma, and then Zomo was a casual laborer who was providing for the family. Now, this lady will be left depressed. The husband is in the jail. She's coming from violence center, but nobody she can cry over. So, in this, congratulate my colleague and supporting this motion. We need to move fast in terms of saving people in society. We should not wait when people they are sick or when the disaster has struck us. That's the time to work. We are coming from violence elections. Anytime our people get in problem, they are only left on the fate of the mercy of guidance, not even having anywhere to lie on. So it is the high time this motion need to be taken care of, and this one properly need to go to Gender and Equity Commission and they implement it immediately. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Huru for order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak to this important motion. I would like to start by thanking Honorable Jessica Mbalu for bringing this to the House for debate, and I support the motion. Mr. Speaker, gender-based violation is a very serious human rights issue. It's also a very big social problem. There is an upsurge in gender-based violation in our country. Of course, when we talk of gender-based violation, it's not only women who are normally targeted. In as much as most of the culprits are women and children, we also have instances where men suffer gender-based violation in some parts of this country. But on such instances, for cultural reasons, they are rarely reported. But all the same, I think it's important for us as a country to have a fund which is proposed through this motion to set up post-trauma care facilities which will provide one-stop support for the survivors. Because it has been proven that our normal health facilities cannot provide the quality of services required to gender-based violence survivors. But when we have post-trauma centers, which are fully funded, well-equipped, and then also fully with all cadre of professionals required, we will be able to provide a comprehensive support to people who become victims of this vice in our society. Mr. Speaker, the survivors of gender-based violation normally require emergency medical support. For instance, when we have them raped, they may require post-exposure prophylaxis, which will be done quickly. There could be instances also where there are some injuries which needs to be attended to, but above all, they also require psychosocial support, proper counseling for them to actually recover psychologically and be able to go back to the community and lead a normal life. At the same time, they also require social support. And also, for them to seek justice, they require such centers to be fully equipped with forensic capabilities so that evidences can be collected and preserved and properly documented so that the perpetrators can be actually taken to court and prosecuted, and therefore the survivors be enabled to actually seek justice and so on and so forth. And therefore, as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say that this is a very timely motion. We require these centers in all parts of our country. We also require it as much as possible, not only in all constituencies, but if possible, even at lower levels, because it's difficult. If we have it in constituencies, some constituencies are very fast, and it's not easy for people living in all corners of vast constituencies to access services from such facilities. I support the motion. Thank you very much.
Should we now have Honorable Murugara?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support this motion and begin by thanking the Honorable Jessica Mbalu for actually bringing the same. It is quite timely and very important, especially in respect of health matters touching on all citizens of Kenya, whether women or men. It is important that the government does set aside funds which will be used to construct the centers, and this can begin from all the sub-counties to the divisions, locations, and finally the sub-locations, to ensure that anyone who suffers post-traumatic stress after violence or whatever other form of injury is actually treated every corner of the country, that this man had actually really violated the rights of this lady and deserved to be arrested immediately and put in jail. But when it came to the case of the man being assaulted, there was a lot of mockery that came again from every corner of the country, where most of the men were despising this guy, saying, how could he actually be battered by a lady, and why did he not pay the bail? I do not think that gender-based violence should be justified in any way, nor should it actually be directed towards whether women or men, but should be an act that is against the law, as we have enacted many acts of parliament dealing with this. What is important is how the person affected by the violence is treated, especially after the act, the post-traumatic effects of that violence. This is why this bill has been brought to the House, so that the government is urged, and this House does resolve, that funds are set aside for these centers to be constructed. I know that in my constituency, Tharaka, we do not have a center such as what is being proposed here. And therefore, when anyone suffers any form of violence, or if anyone suffers any post-traumatic effect, the effect is to go to a normal hospital where you will get drugs and then you are sent away. The net effect is that possibly that person is totally destroyed emotionally and may actually never recover, may never be able to do anything that is useful in life because of what one has gone through. And especially the sexual offenses, which relate to ladies most of the case. It is important that these persons are not only treated medically, but they are also counseled, they are also given a further treatment that is psychological for the benefit of that person fully recovering. So put up these centers for purposes of our citizens. I do support.
Very well. Before I give Honorable Bunjansi John, member for Nambale, allow me to recognize at the public gallery of 3 schools, Kipiego Primary School, Malakwet East, Elegeo, Malakwet County. We also have California PAG, Kamokoji constituency, Nairobi County. And we have Shekina Primary School, Kimirili constituency, Bugoba County. They are welcome. Yes, Honorable Bunyasi John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise to support this motion, and I start by commending highly Honorable Jessica Mbalu for bringing this motion before the House. It is assumed, or presumed actually, it may be largely true, that most of the violence is on women by men, although there are exceptions to it. So in thinking about post-trauma centers, I'm thinking mostly about rescue centers for women, even though there may be the odd guy who has run away because the wife has been teaching him a lesson one too many times. Although in many of our cultures, because of the strong or patriarchal nature, that they may not show up, men may not show up after they have been beaten by women. So I think it's going to be largely gender with the victims being mostly women. Mr. Speaker, sir, some of the actions that are done against women include violence, sexual violence, physical violence, verbal violence, are really horrible. And they are usually put under the drug on the grounds that it's cultural, this is cultural, that, and so on. If, for example, you get a case of rape of an underage child, and the parents accept a goat or a cow or some money or something like that, and then the thing is settled, or even worse still, much, much worse still, the victim is sent on to go and get married to the oppressor. I think these are serious violations of human rights, which are condemned under our Constitution, and are things that we should look at with great disfavor. We can't move forward as a society if we tolerate this kind of deviance, this kind of aggression in society of one set of citizens against another. I strongly support not only the physical construction of a center, but more importantly, the inculcation to the police, the judicial system, to the administration, that this is wrong. We should punish administrators, police, who make jokes of these kinds of things. As they say, sometimes after a woman has undergone an ordeal such as that of rape, you go and find the police are making a joke of it. They kind of take it extremely lightly. That must be punished. So I would like to see, beyond the physical infrastructure, a big effort to retrain, to increase awareness in great detail as for what it is that tortures women beyond the physical and how they can refrain from making these kinds of situations worse. We have had a situation even in this city where they say in one of our leading schools in Nairobi that the teachers even insist that the girls go have a shower instead of taking them straight away to the women's hospital so that they can get a DNA and measure it. That is collusion in crime. It's these kinds of things that we must really and truly punish. We've seen in a few lucky situations where people have caught this on camera. Men, quote unquote, disciplining their wives in ways, this is so barbaric. But what happens then? The poor woman then has still now to go around and again face the ridicule that comes from the law enforcement agencies. Two, police may not take action if there's no complainant, they would say. And the victim may not want to be the complainant because she doesn't know about her own safety. There must be a way in which the police, the law enforcement, can pick up cases of this nature once they're aware that it has happened. You can't be sitting in a police station and 50 meters away something happens, say officially we have not been told. It's that kind of attitude that has led to the kind of impunity you see in this regard. I really feel strongly that this is a very timely motion that will follow through with the infrastructural side, but I think that we will really need to get the soft side also done so that the training and awareness is increased. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, sir, I strongly support this, and I hope that Nambale will become one of the first centers to be built. Thank you very much indeed.
Shall we have Honorable Maje?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance. But me, I want to see it differently to oppose my honorable member, because I tend to think by creating these institutions is like we are accepting that is the way to go. Because if you create an institution somewhere, it is as if you have said these are the correct values and we should accommodate it. What I tend to think as a country, we should try to increase the value systems that we have. We have structures on the ground, like we have the children department that can cater for that trying. If you check, for example, somebody who has been raped, and then you put that person to an institution, that institution by itself will be traumatizing by itself. So I tend to think we should have a department in our hospitals that we can be referring these kind of cases, where they are referred maybe by the police system, because there will be always a violence in nature. If somebody reports in the police station, then the person will be directed to that institution. If the person goes to the hospital, then after hospital, he or he can be directed to that institution. Mr. Speaker, I am trying to see the management of that institution. And you see, trauma, to some extent, is personal. It is one-to-one. It means you will also create so many counseling people, the department, the counselors themselves, because these trauma are different in nature. For example, the person who has been raped is different from a person who has another violence from the husband. Therefore, you require different counselors in that institution. I think we are going maybe to burden this government with institutions that we can cater at a different level. Mr. Speaker, also we know we have churches to alleviate these kind of issues where people go to church after that and they are talked to. And also, trauma is a short-term period. You are traumatized at this particular time, you are cancelled, then you are integrated to the mainstream. Because if you say, you talk of an institution, you'll talk of curriculum. Imagine what will be taught in that post-trauma institution. You can check the kind of curriculum that you will introduce in that. Mr. Speaker, I tend to think we should view it in that case and make sure that at least we strengthen our value units and make sure that we don't discriminate these by putting them in one spot. With these few remarks, I want to oppose and say that we can create some institutions in our hospitals where these people can be referred to. And also, remember, we have homes where we refer children who have been mistreated in their places. So I oppose this particular motion.
Very well, honourable members. Obviously, from my screen, many more members would have loved to speak to this important motion. But the time for the motion is gone. The time allocated for that particular motion. And in the circumstances, shall I call the mover to reply?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As I reply, I would wish to be philanthropic enough to donate 2 minutes to the member for Kuria West, and also Honorable Cecily Barile, when she is back, she's consulting, and I'll remain with my 6 minutes. And the Honorable Otiende.
You have 5 minutes. Yes. So I. Give her the mic.
For record purpose, the member for Kuria West, 1 minute. The Honorable Otiende, a lawyer in the House, a minute. And if Honorable Ses Barile would have come back maybe to register herself, a minute.
Very well. Shall we start with member for Kuria? Is it Kuria West? Yes, you have the floor. 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. First, Mr. Speaker, let me take this opportunity to congratulate the honorable member who brought this motion in the House. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support this motion, being very important to society. As we know, this violence of gender happens every constituency. And Mr. Speaker, as we have been watching in media, many cases have come up, and this can rescue women who get such cases. Mr. Speaker, we understand this is a normal circumstances where people or men happen that in the process they cause problems or they infect women. And if this facility.
Very well. The next minute was donated to Honorable Otiende Amolo. And the screen reads Dr. Otiende or Amolo. Your minute starts running.
We need to talk, eh? So let me use this next one. Well, I have to move, Mr. Speaker, and I hope my movement does not detract from my minutes. Yes, indeed, that is the title, Mr. Speaker. In my 1 minute, I support this motion, and I urge only 3 quick things. One, in all the words that read women in this motion, let us have a purposive reading to mean men or women, for the word gender is both masculine and feminine. 2, I urge that even as we urge national government to take these interventions, let us also urge our county governments to take necessary interventions, for this whole edifice falls within the ambit of health, which is actually devolved. But thirdly, let us also not forget our family values. Traditionally, persons who found themselves in these circumstances were accommodated within the neighbor's family setting. And therefore, I urge, Mr. Speaker, that we put that responsibility for national government, but we also assume it. But lastly, let us not forget the most important thing. In every such instance, it is a criminal offense. We must prosecute all those who engage in these matters, even as we seek to protect the victims. I support, Mr. Speaker.
Next one was Honorable Cecily Barire. But I can see Honorable Cecily Barire is a node member in this House, but I can tell he has breached 1 or 2 rules of the House as I watched. But please proceed, Honorable Cecily Barire. You seem to be redemptive.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to first congratulate the Honorable Jessica Mbalu for seeing it fit to bring this motion before the House, a motion whose time has come, a motion that is coming at a time when we are seeing an increased rise of cases on gender-based violence. And Mr. Speaker, although in the past we saw more of gender-based violence against women and the girl child, we are seeing also an increased number of gender-based violence against the boy child and men. And therefore, it is important that we pass this motion, not just to rescue women and girls, but also to rescue men and boys who are becoming latest victims of gender-based violence. Mr. Speaker, sir, it's important for people to know that gender-based violence is any form of either physical, sexual, or psychological trauma on anybody, Mr. Speaker. We are seeing an increased number of reporting of cases. The only problem is I think these cases are happening also on men and women and they are not reported. We need to report them more. We need to have centers where urgent treatment can happen, where P3 forms can be given to the victim so that those who have done it may be taken to court as quickly as possible. But more importantly, that counseling may take place, especially for our girls in schools. And it's also important to note that under the CEDAW Convention that was signed in 1979, FGM is identified as one of those gender-based violence practices, Madam Speaker. With those few remarks, I beg to support.
Yes, Honorable Jessica Balu, you have the remainder of the minutes.
Honorable Speaker, there's one member who just wants to say he supports, he wants to go into record, Honorable Moselino. If you can just give him, he's talked over half a minute.
Honorable Jessica, you seem to be extending your
Thank
graciousness.
You. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also arise to support this motion, which has been brought about by Honorable Jessica Mbalu on construction of post-trauma care facilities throughout our constituencies. Mr. Speaker, truly, many people have actually suffered in this country. Many women have suffered in this country in the past, including also men. And as you are aware, that there is a lot of introduction of gayism in the world over, including lesbianism. So, Mr. Speaker, such practices actually is what is actually taking place in our country in institutions. So I support, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable Jessica Balu.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, and I can see the members really want you to put the question, and so I want to take my 2-3 minutes. Mr. Speaker, allow me to reply the motion on construction of post-trauma care facilities for survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank the members who have contributed to the motion. Mr. Speaker, around 26 members have contributed to the motion, with all of them supporting, apart from the Honorable Lokomotai, who seems not to understood the motion and the need for a special care for the gender-based violence victims. Mr. Speaker, it came out very well that the gender-based violence is for both men, women, girls, and boys. Last week when I was moving my motion, Mr. Speaker, we gave statistics on the numbers. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the members who have appreciated that the gender-based violence, the trauma centers construction will bring healing and reconciliation for the victims, Mr. Speaker. It will also bring psychological, in terms of doctors' availability, issues of legal, help will be given from the trauma centers. It will help in treating of emotions. It is a temporary care, Mr. Speaker, for the victims. It's also a center for the survivors, Mr. Speaker, to receive some time for the healing. As you're aware, and why I brought the motion, Mr. Speaker, in Kenya, we do not have a center that takes care of this apart from Kilifi, that is government constructed. We have one in Kilifi that does not meet the standards, Mr. Speaker. Most of the shelters are from NGOs, they're from, individuals. Mr. Speaker, this motion seeks to urge the government to provide shelters or rescue centers, as safe houses for the victims of SGBV, which remain a crucial link that is missing in national efforts to prevent and mitigate SGBV, Mr. Speaker. We have several cases of domestic violence, Mr. Speaker, and this one is for the whole country, not just to mention the Ms. Anzomo case that has really brought a lot of anxiety, and the other lady was fighting the men. Mr. Speaker, allow me announce to the House that the court of Makueni has slapped one Ms. Anzomo with a jail term of 12 years, Mr. Speaker. 12 years. It has just happened in the Makueni law courts. And Mr. Speaker, I think this is really a move to ensure that families, both women and men, kids and girls and boys are really protected. Mr. Speaker, in these centers, we will receive or provide safety to victims as well as other assistance, including legal, medical, and psychosocial support. Similarly, it may provide an avenue for conciliation between the violent husband, maybe, and wife. It will also maybe a proactive measure. Because I want to imagine if you, a woman or a man, would foresee such violence, they'd be able to rush here to get the necessary assistance, the legal. We have seen this in schools. We have seen this in, even the men have been violated on that. I said last time when the Honorable Kioni, who did very well, second the motion, said if the men, they are beaten and sometimes they are a bit silent. So the numbers, I'm sure, is going to increase. And he really gave a very good example on some of the benefits I've been able to get. Mr. Speaker, the rape cases are very disturbing. You imagine a rapist, there is a man in Kawagware just who committed suicide after discovering that he had impregnated the daughter. Mr. Speaker, with that, I want to, because I can see we have, I'm not a speaker, we have the numbers. I want to just thank the members and say that I'm going to move ahead with the information that we got from the members to make sure that we make amendments to the necessary laws to ensure that all this is achieved. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Very well.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
I don't know from where you sit, and for the obvious, if it is not, I request the Speaker to defer putting of the question, pursuant to Standing Order number 53, yes, if the necessary has not been achieved.
Yes, Honorable Jessica, I am completely well guided on that one. And in the circumstances, and as you have quoted the Standing Order, I'll paid putting the question on that particular motion. Next order.
Order number 11, the Constitution of Kenya, Amendment number 2 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 5 of 2018, second reading.
Honorable Chris Wamalwa. Honorable Chris Wamalwa being absent. And what is it, Honorable Lango?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I see in the chamber my colleagues in Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, Honorable Murugara, Honorable Mbugu, and Jennifer Shamala. This matter came before the committee yesterday. We approved the report, signed it, but I feel that my chairman has not tabled the report yet, because he was here in the morning and I didn't get a chance to talk to him. So I request, Mr. Speaker, that we put this aside so that I can contact the chairman of our committee to establish whether he has tabled the report or not.
Very well. Very well. And over and above the report, Lide, also Honorable Chris Wamalwa, who is, should move the second reading, is also absent. So we'll step that business down. Next order.
Order number 12, motion, establishment of special needs primary and secondary schools in every constituency.
Very well. Honorable, before I give Honorable Mishi Boko a chance, allow me again to recognize the Speaker's gallery Makini School, Kibos, from Muhoroni constituency, Kisumu County. And they are welcome to watch and follow the proceedings of the House. Honorable Mishi Boko, you have the floor. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the following motion, that aware that Article 53B and 54 of the Constitution guarantees the right to free and compulsory basic education for every child and provide for persons with disability, respectively, in that persons with disability have a right to access educational institutions and facilities that are integrated into society to the extent compatible with their interests and needs. Further aware that the government provides for education to children living with disabilities through integrated units in primary school, cognizant of the fact that the lack of a clear implementation framework of the special needs education policy, inadequate funding, and inadequate teachers with the right skills to teach children with disabilities across the various regions of country hampers access by children with disabilities. Deeply concerned that there are few designated special education schools in the country, hampering access by those children with various, including and not limited to autism, dyslexia, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and physical disability. And therefore, there is a need to provide special attention to these children. This House urges the government through the Ministry of Education to establish a special needs unit in every primary and secondary school, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, education is a fundamental right enshrined in the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, reaffirmed at the Jotim World Declaration of Education for All Conference in 1990. The conference emphasized that every person, child, youth, and adults should benefit from educational opportunities designed to meet their learning needs. The global efforts to champion the needs of children living with disability was also emphasized at the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, that is 2006. The convention said that persons with disabilities should be guaranteed the right to inclusive education at all levels, regardless of age, without discrimination, and on the basis of equal opportunity. In this regard, state parties should ensure that 1. Children with disability are not excluded from free and compulsory primary education or from secondary education, Mr. Speaker. Persons with disabilities receive the necessary support within the general education system to facilitate their effective education, and effective individualized support measures are put in place to maximize academic and social development, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution of Kenya guarantees the right to education for every person under Article 43. More importantly, the Basic Education Act 2012 and Children Act of 2001, enacted by Parliament, provide that every child shall be entitled to free and compulsory basic education. Furthermore, the Sessional Paper number 1 of 2005 underscores the importance of special needs education as human capital development to empower the marginalized. Mr. Speaker, progress has been made in access to education globally. However, millions of children living with disability are still out of school. According to a study conducted by the World Health Organization 2011 in 51 countries, only 50.6% of males with disabilities had completed primary school, compared with 61.3% of their counterpart with disability. On the other hand, only 41.7% of female students completed primary school, while 52.9% of those without disability did. Furthermore, the study found that even in countries with high school enrollment rates, such as those in Eastern Europe, many children with disability did not attend school at all. The Education for All Global Monitoring Report, United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization also estimate that 77 million children are out of school and more than 1/3 are disabled. For instance, in our country, Mr. Speaker, about 100,000 children with disability are out of school. In Kenya, the percentage of people with disability by 2007 was estimated at 10% of the total population. That is about 38.6 million of our population. Approximately 25% of these were children of school-going age, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Kenya's earliest effort for organized care and provision of special needs education dates back to the late 1940s, with much involvement of the religious institution in establishing special schools and institutions for children with visual...
Order, Honorable Mishi Boko. I can see Honorable Manje Wadigo. You have an intervention. What is...
yes, Mr. Speaker.
What is it?
I'm starting on point of order. I have been in education sector for some time, and I was in education committee last term. And I tend to think this motion, there is an act that is contradicted by this motion. Establishing of special needs primary and secondary school in every constituency contradicts an act of parliament that was established, and it is Education for Persons with Special Education Needs Act 2004, which states that a child with education needs shall be educated in an inclusive environment. That is, the education has to have another normal primary school. After assessment, that kid will be taken to a special class attached to an ordinary school, so that after some time, the kid is integrated to the normal the normal school. So I want a ruling maybe to this motion, because the way it is put, it contradicts an act of parliament. You cannot establish a single primary school somewhere for people living with disability, because it will be discriminative in nature.
Speaker, can I intervene?
Did you say, Honorable...
I have said in my resolve, this House urges the government...
Order, Honorable Mishiboko. I will just certainly give you a chance on that one. I just wanted to be clear from the member who has raised an intervention that on the provisions of law, did you say that the Act actually provides, and I will refer to it actually, that there should be no separate school for special needs. It should be part and parcel of the mainstream school. And I'm sure you have looked at that motion particularly. But
there is an act, it's called Education for Persons with Special Education Need Act 2004. And this is what is practiced in our primary schools. And that's where the issue of integration is. A kid is taken to a special unit in a school system, and when the kid is realized he can cope with what is being taught, he's integrated. So the school cannot be separate.
Very well. Honorable Mishi Boko, you can assume your seat. I just give one or two intervention chances on this particular one. What the honorable member has just raised. What is it, Honorable? Yes, Honorable Olago, watch.
Mr. Speaker, I think...
On that particular issue.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think Honorable Manje has missed the point. I think the basic that Honorable Mishimboko is asking for is an integrated system in our primary schools and secondary schools. And what Honorable Manje is talking about is exclusive. And that's what we are trying to get rid of, so that those who are suffering from disabilities, and by the way, it's no longer called suffering from disabilities, it's people who are able differently, not people living with disability. And what the motion is asking for, Mr. Speaker, is that these children should be integrated with others, not put in an exclusive situation. And that's what in the Act. I want to make that clear, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. I'll give a few other members as we speak to it. We are on a point of order, Honorable Miri, and I'll give you a chance. Honorable Cecily Barrier.
Mr. Speaker, unless I'm reading this motion wrong, what Honorable Mishi is attempting to push for or to allow this House to pass is for exclusive schools for children with special needs in every constituency. So that for every constituency, we have a special needs primary school, and a special needs secondary school. What I recall is that the act we passed was actually integrating special needs children into existing mainstream primary or secondary schools. And that is why, if I recall, as a member of parliament for Runyenjes, I did put up special classes in most of the primary schools in Runyenjes for special needs children, and making sure that there's infrastructure that enables them to be part of the mainstream primary schools. So I am thinking that we may need guidance on that, because then if there's already an act for integration, then we cannot go to exclusivity. And the reason why they went against exclusivity is so that these kids may grow up feeling part and parcel of society and allowing other children to accept them as part of society. Exclusivity was going to enhance the practice that we normally see with parents. They hide their children with special needs. We want them to be part and parcel of society, Mr. Speaker. So we'd want to confirm that Honorable Manje has raised.
Very well. Yes, Honorable Mirio, I can see you have already an intervention, and you have the floor now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even though I have not read the motion, but I was listening to Honorable Mishi, and I tend to agree with Honorable Mbarire that from my understanding, that is what Honorable Mishi is proposing. Nonetheless, that's not my issue. My issue is normally when a member brings a motion and the speaker should be intervening only if it is unconstitutional. Mr. Speaker, what Honorable Mishi is bringing is not unconstitutional. She's just giving a different, she's trying to persuade members either to move away from that position in the law, because once she passes it, then she can now bring a substantive amendment. Or if the other members are not persuaded, then they can bring a further amendment or ask Honorable Mishi to amend a motion. But you cannot, in my considered, not in my considered view, but in my view, Mr. Speaker, really stop the motion for Honorable Mishi based on the fact that there is an act. It's really more like what my good sisters brought here about the Sexual Offences Act. For her, she's adding something more, proposing an addition to something on the Sexual Offences Act. But for Honorable Mishi, she's saying that maybe what we are doing now does not work, so maybe we need to be persuaded to move another direction. So in your giving the direction, Mr. Speaker, I think what you should be guided is it unconstitutional? And it is not. There is no provision in the Constitution that, you know, what the honorable member is actually relying on is legislation, not the Constitution. Thank you.
Well, I'll give only one other member, then I'll give direction on this particular matter. Honorable Otiende, and as I said earlier, the screen reads doctor.
Mr. Speaker, that microphone seems to have a problem. As I confirmed earlier, Mr. Speaker, indeed, that is the proper reading. Mr. Speaker, I join my colleagues who indicate that on the face of it, there is nothing unconstitutional about this motion. Not only because of the reason stated that you cannot quote legislation to claim it's unconstitutional, but also for the reason that on its very face, all that this motion seeks to do is to replicate whatever has been done, but now in every constituency, without necessarily questioning the basis. So no matter what the basis of that legislation is, it is only saying, let us have it in every constituency, at least one primary and one secondary. When we come to debating on how it is to be implemented, then we can look at the legislation that exists and determine whether the integrated method is the better one or the exclusive method is the better one. But on its very face, Mr. Speaker, there is nothing on it that even contradicts the Act. So I urge that we allow the mover to proceed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. I need to give direction on this particular one. Very well. Let me give direction so that then we get to the substantive part. First of all, I think honorable member is in order to have raised a point of order on this one. Just to be clear, that then we are not engaging on a motion that contradicts express law. But as Honorable Miri Odhiambo says, the major issue is to check whether the motion is unconstitutional. And I think that is not now on the floor. The constitutionality is clear. It's just to be clear, what the member wanted to be clear is that it is not contradicting an express law that has been passed by this House. Now, honorable members, if you actually look at that motion, if you just took time and read the text of the motion, not the topic, clearly you can tell, if you read the topic or the subject of that motion and you read the text, there is a variance. If you read the actual text of that motion, it is not asking for exclusive primary and secondary schools. It is asking for units within primary schools, existing primary school. I think that is very instructive. But the member who raised this issue may have looked actually at the subject of that motion, which is a varied issue, because the subject or the topic or the title of that motion seems to be asking for exclusive special needs primary and secondary school. But when you read the text of the motion, it is addressing itself to units within existing primary and secondary school. And to that extent, the motion is properly and lightly here and does not contradict any law in that case. But it was good for the honorable member to raise that, because as you can tell, he had an hawk eye on the motion. So Honorable Mishiboko, please proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, and also thank you for the guidance. It is good that we are on the same page when we are moving such motion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speakers, Kenya earliest effort for organized care and provincial of special needs education dates back to the late 1940s, with much involvement of the religious institution in establishing special schools and institutions for children with visual, hearing, physical and mental disabilities in various parts of the country where they had mission, Mr. Speaker. The management of most of these institutions has, however, been taken over by the Minister of Education, while the Kenya Institute of Special Education, established in 1986, built the capacity of special needs education services provided through teacher training and teacher in servicing and research, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, special need education is currently provided in special school through the integration processes and in special units attached to regular school. This is in line with the universal primary school education to embrace inclusive practices by keeping special needs children in ordinary classrooms where they align with their peers. Mr. Speaker, although we have that policy of integrating children with disabilities in the school, there are few public schools, that is the primary and the secondary school, which have now implemented this policy, Mr. Speaker. For instance, in my constituency, there is only one primary school called Mtongwe Primary, which has implemented that policy, whereby they have integrated children with disability in that school, Mr. Speaker. That shows that despite having that policy, still our public schools have not embraced it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, You can even imagine, Mr. Speaker, the issue of transition from one level to another needs to be addressed, Mr. Speaker, because we have few ECD for people with disability who can join those schools. We also have few primary school, we also have few secondary school, and that is why we have only few students who enroll themselves in our public university. For instance, we have only 645 students with disability that are in more than 70 public and private universities in our country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, also, for the few schools who have integrated the people with disability in their schools, we don't have equipment, Mr. Speaker. There are no ramps, Mr. Speaker, so that the children can access the classrooms, Mr. Speaker. We also don't have adapted desks because those children with disability cannot just use the normal desk, Mr. Speaker. We also need to have special toilet, Mr. Speaker. In the so many schools we go, we visit them, to ascertain whether those children with disability can access the toilet. It is really amazing, Mr. Speaker. It is really wanting. They cannot access those toilets, Mr. Speaker. For instance, for those visually and those hearing impaired, Mr. Speaker, students, they don't have the functional devices to assist them in the learning processes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, according to school mapping data set of 2008, there are only 3,464 special needs institutions. 38.2% early childhood development and education, that is ECD, 3.4% alternative provision of basic education, 54.1% primary and 4.3% secondary school, Mr. Speaker. In the country with 2,713 integrated institutions and 751 special schools, Eastern Province recorded the most number of special needs education units with 734, while Northeastern had the lowest with 56 units, Mr. Speaker. Among these, there were 10 public secondary schools for learners with hearing school. For instance, for those students with visual impaired, in my constituency, we have the school for the blind, the only one in the entire Mombasa County, which has a primary and a secondary school for those visual impaired, Mr. Speaker. These students, they need the braille for them to be able to have the teaching processes, Mr. Speaker. And this is not happening, Mr. Speaker. Every time we are talking about including children with disability in terms of accessing to education, but in really sense, Mr. Speaker, we are doing very little, Mr. Speaker. There is a big population of these children with different types of disabilities who are not going to school, Mr. Speaker. The few who are going to school are those who are physical challenged, Mr. Speaker. For those with autism, Mr. Speaker, for those with hydrocephalus and spina bifida, for those with cerebral palsy, Mr. Speaker, they are still at home. Some of them have been chained and have just been hidden in our homes, and they don't go to school, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a very important motion, Mr. Speaker, and I want to urge and request my colleague to support this motion so that we want to ensure our children with disability, they can also access education so that we implement what the Constitution has talked, especially in the Bills of Rights, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and now request Honorable Lusweti Mukwe to second this motion, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Honorable Lusweti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I know Honorable Mishi, last month they visited my constituency where they saw a school for the special needs, both primary and the second school. And that's why she was first to bring the motion to this parliament. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we talk of special schools, we have those children who are blind, we have children who cannot hear. So we must have a special school in our constituency for the blind and for those who are not able to hear, so that, Mr. Speaker, when they are in class, take for instance when they are doing examination, we have one student who was writing using his leg. If they are not given special attention, if they are not given extra time, Mr. Speaker, it will be impossible for them to write or to compete with those ones who are normal. Because, Mr. Speaker, take, for instance, someone writing with a leg. They need a special desk. they need a special place. They must be given extra time so they can also compete with those ones who are normal. Mr. Speaker, like in Mumias, we have a school, Mumias School for the Deaf. In Thika, we have Thika School for the Blind. This is a special school, Mr. Speaker, that's going to help our children who are at home, those who have been hidden, with mothers who fear to take their children to school. This one is going to assist us, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if these people are taken to school, for instance, I saw on our WhatsApp, there was a man who was making dress for the women. Mr. Speaker, it was interesting, using the legs to make a dress for women. Then, Mr. Speaker, there is a lady in Kenya who has a child, but she cooks with her legs. She washes the clothes with her legs. Mr. Speaker, this is very vital. The motion is timely. We want to assist our children to access education. Those who are disabled, those who cannot hear, those who are blind, so that, Mr. Speaker, they also access education because this is a right. In Kenya, it's constitutional. Mr. Speaker, if we say sometimes we want to mix these children, Mr. Speaker, we have those ones without hands. When they may be visiting a toilet, Mr. Speaker, it is difficult. So we must have special need toilets for them. We must have devices for those who are blind. We must have devices for those who cannot hear, and those who cannot see. Mr. Speaker, like sign language. Sign language is in a special school. We have teachers who are training in special need, for special need education. Those ones are there, Mr. Speaker, to assist us. So the best thing, Mr. Speaker, is to train also teachers who are going to assist our children, those with disability, those who cannot try to using their hands. We have another one in that school, Mr. Speaker. She writes using her mouth because she doesn't have the legs and the hands. So, Mr. Speaker, this motion is timely, and I beg to second.
Honourable members, I will proceed to propose a question, which is that aware that Article 53B and 54 of the Constitution guarantees the right to free and compulsory basic education for every child and provides for persons with disabilities respectively, in that persons with disability have a right to access educational institutions and facilities that are integrated into society to the extent compatible with their interests and needs. Further, aware that the government provides for education to children living with disabilities through integrated units in primary schools. Cognizant of the fact that the lack of a clear implementation framework of the special needs education policy, inadequate funding, and inadequate teachers with the right skills to teach children with disability across the various regions of country hampers access by children with disabilities. Deeply concerned that there are few designated special education schools in the country hampering access by those children living with various, including and not limited to autism, dyslexia, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and physical disabilities, and therefore there is need to provide special attention to these children. This House urges the government through the Ministry of Education to establish a special needs unit in every primary and secondary school. Honourable members, before we proceed, allow me again to recognize at the public gallery 4 schools visiting: Gagra Primary School in Rarieda constituency, Siaya County; Nyambera Primary School in Rarieda constituency, Siaya County; Kenyenya Junior Academy, Bomachoge, Bolabu constituency, Kisii County; and Riajeru Primary School, Bede South constituency, Ebu County. Very well. Honorable Wetangula Wanyonyi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance to contribute to this motion. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion because, Mr. Speaker, we need special units in every school for children with special needs. Mr. Speaker, there are schools that are specially designated for children with disability. And this sometimes is for children with severe disability, Mr. Speaker, that may not be able to integrate them in the normal system of normal schools. And that is allowed, Mr. Speaker, because this has been the trend before. But the trend today, Mr. Speaker, is to have an integrated system of education whereby children with disability and the children without disability learn together. Mr. Speaker, recently when I at a tour of the US, I took time, Mr. Speaker, and went to see a school which has got an integrated system of education, how it is done there. Mr. Speaker, it is very, very interesting how they have integrated their system. The children in those schools, Mr. Speaker, who are disabled and the children without disability, Mr. Speaker, you cannot even notice the difference. What is important there, Mr. Speaker, is the facilities that are incorporated in the system, the infrastructure, Mr. Speaker. You find the washrooms, the bathrooms, even the places. You don't find anywhere where you see any hindrance for these children to move around. The place is properly done. You find ramps are everywhere, doors are white, the washrooms are properly done for them to fit. And this is the system where, Mr. Speaker, that when a child is in school, the child must be comfortable. And sometimes children who need maybe some special care, there are parents who volunteer to go and sit in the school and assist. And in our own system, Mr. Speaker, we are trying to also move into this kind of system where we have integrated education system where children with disability and children without disability learn together. And in the process, Mr. Speaker, they will appreciate that the other people who are able differently, and they can also just participate like any other child. We have seen children with disability playing together with children with who are normal, Mr. Speaker, and this is the way to go. And that's why we are moving away from the charity way of doing things to the rights way of doing things, so that we recognize the rights of children with disability. Mr. Speaker, we also want to say that the government must also move, Mr. Speaker, to train teachers who can, Mr. Speaker, impart education to these children with special needs. Because I've seen most teachers of special education, Mr. Speaker, they train themselves. And I know, Mr. Speaker, in my constituency, I've studied several units in primary schools. And those units exist, but we don't have teachers. And we've been looking around that the government can employ teachers in this sector. And sometimes teachers who are there, they volunteer themselves. They volunteer to do it, and they're paid by parents. And we have seen even a school, for example, we have a school of children with cerebral palsy. Mr. Speaker, is sponsored by the parents. There's nothing that the government has done for them. The parents have come together, and some parents who are not able are paid for by the other parents who are able. And in most cases, Mr. Speaker, we find ourselves contributing to such. So we would like to support this motion that these units, they should be established in every school, in every constituency, and they must also be supported by the government. We must give funds. And maybe even through the CDF, we can have a special fund for that, so that we can support special units within our own primary school, so that we can have integrated. Mr. Speaker, the other thing is the transition from primary to secondary school. We find that the secondary schools are not prepared to take these children from primary schools. And also, there's also a challenge during the examination time, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes the children are not given the time. They're given the same time in the examination like the other normal children, Mr. Speaker. So we need to look at it comprehensively so that we deal with the issue, so that nobody is discriminated when it comes to education.
Very well, very well. Next is Honorable Yusuf Haji.
current situations in the schools.
Next. It's gone off again. Okay, I have two now. I can put off one. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I support Honorable Mishi's motion. I think it is very timely. We have so many children all over, and so few schools which are able to cater for children which are able differently. If I take, for an example, Mandera County, in the whole county, we have one special school. And the children who are there are able differently. Some are deaf, others are blind, others have autism, and they have only one school. Even in that school, we still need sections, different sections for different type of disability that are within the children. And it's not only the facilities, it's not only the structures that we need to put in place, but also we need to have personnel, teachers to be trained specifically for those specific disabilities and to be available in all those schools. We also need tools, special tools for each type of disability that is within that area. Recently, I think some of you must have seen in the social media, there was a farmer who have no hands. Both hands are cut off. He was a potato farmer. He uses his two legs to dig using a djembe, harvesting, packing his potatoes in gunias, and it is just fantastic. We cannot say that person is disabled. That person is only able differently. And therefore, all these children we call disables are not disabled. They are able differently. So we need to support them and help them and give them the necessary facilities to make sure they get what they want. Currently, from my experience, I know so many of them do not even go to school. From the time the child is born and the parents realize that this child is disabled in one way or another, then that child is kept in the home. Some of them are even hidden, actually. Some of them are even chained, so that when visitors come, they don't crouch and come to be seen by the visitors. Therefore, this is a true situation. This motion is very timely. I support this motion. And not only, actually, we may start with the constituency level, depending on the availability of the resources that are there. But if you look at the serious needs, these are required almost in every school. In every school, whether it is at national level, county level, sub-county level, ward level, or every school requires this. So I support this motion. Thank you.
The Honorable Odege Mboe, member for Nyatike. It's not in the house. The Honorable Dr. Otiende Amolo, member for Rarieda. He's left also. The Honorable Ochieng Awor, member for Migori.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me also to add my voice to this important motion brought by my sister Mishi. Aware of that act that my honorable member was quoting the other time, we agree that in the entire country there is actually a serious need of looking once again at the educational plight of the children and all people in Kenya with disability and special needs to learn in one way or the other. Mr. Speaker, I want to bring it to the attention of the House that much as all the speakers have been concentrating on thinking about physical disabilities like blindness, affected limbs in one way or another, deafness and things like that, I want to let the House know that there are also people who are looking normal in every other way,
but they have special needs to learn. For example, in a normal classroom, having been a teacher over a number of years, I am aware that there could be some children who have serious high IQs that makes them abnormal. Even the teachers cannot really cope with their learning speed, and a impairment that can be categorized as people with special learning needs. Having said that, if you read the motion that my Honorable Mishi brought forth, you realize there are a number of challenges, and the truth is, if that act or policy was implemented, and I know it has been implemented in some areas, there is a lot of lack. The area of teaching is a problem in most of these schools. You find that a school has been declared like able to accommodate people with special learning needs, but there are no personnel, and this cuts across the country. In Migori County, where I come from, I think the only well-established school that can take care of special needs, and it is only the deaf, is Kuja School for the Deaf. The rest of the children, they are all usually taken to Kisumu or Siaya to get schools where to learn. Now imagine the distance. Even the parents or whoever is their guardian is never able to visit them and make them feel part of the family. And therefore, I think looking at the distances, some of our counties are so vast that if you only have one special needs school, then you really can't make all the children reach this school. And therefore, it is imperative that we need to make sure, the government needs to make sure that every other primary school and secondary school in our country is actually equipped to take care of the interest of people with special needs to learn. The numbers have increased over the years. I am aware, Mr. Speaker, that culturally, as been stated, some of our communities or the parents would be shy to bring forth these children and bring them out and make them be part of the community. But with the civic education and with the advocates and the campaigns to let people know that these children are just like any other, I think their numbers have increased, and therefore we need to increase the number of special schools, the facilities, the teachers, and every other equipment required to make these people learn effectively. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion. Thank you.
Members, I just would like to remind you that you have 5 minutes to contribute in this kind of motion. We shall have the Honorable Wachira Kabinga, member from where?
With full recognition that as a country, we need to take care of our brothers and sisters who are blessed differently and who have different abilities. Mr. Speaker, having done so, I'm still lost on this motion, Mr. Speaker, because I'm wondering whether we are urging the government to implement the existing policy and act, or we are bringing in a new thing, Mr. Speaker. When I read the text of this particular motion, Mr. Speaker, I realize that the mover do recognize that there is a policy, an existing policy, and that policy is lacking a clear implementation framework.
I don't want to talk about. And Honorable Mishi is talking about issues of special needs that most of us don't want to talk about. Mr. Speaker, I won't say much. I just want to indicate that what we are discussing here could very well be a case where we are asking that special units be put in each school, or it could be a case for setting up special schools. Either way, Mr. Speaker, what is happening is that we are realizing there is a need. And I'd want to say that if you actually look at the act that was being referred to, it is an act of 2004, and time changes very fast. And I would want to encourage the ministry responsible that we need to do a research and determine whether in Kenya we are actually ready for putting or integrating the children. I know the ultimate standard should be to integrate the children. But one, as other members have said, do we have the teachers who are skilled that can be in every single school? I have almost 112 primary schools in my constituency. I have 34 secondary schools in my constituency. Now with 112 plus 34, how many special needs teachers do we have? We don't. So what, and even when we look at the issue of disability, we have different cases, as members have said. Some are mental, others are physical, and they are very, even within the mental, there are very many different cases. But Mr. Speaker, one of the things that I want to say is, at least, because I'm hearing many members are saying that in their constituencies they don't have, at least I want to congratulate myself and my constituency. We have several schools. We have Nyamuga Special Primary School.
Needs of children who has a disability. Mr. Speaker, Article 53B and 54 of the Constitution guarantees to free and compulsory basic education for every child and provide right for persons with disability as well. Mr. Speaker, learning disabilities should not be limited, but must cover a wide spectrum of disorders ranging from mild to severe. Mr. Speaker, they can include mental, physical, they can include behavioral and emotional disabilities. Mr. Speaker, special need primary schools must therefore cover as many as those who are able differently, such as autism, visual impairment, Mr. Speaker, emotional disturbances, hearing disorders, intellectual disability, multiple disabilities, as well as orthopedic impairment. Mr. Speaker, it must also cover areas of speech or language impairment, because as this is becoming all too often in Kenya today. Mr. Speaker, there are also areas such as
Honorable Mishi, because she have brought this particular motion at the right time. Honorable Speaker, I want also to tell the House, but there are those which we cannot integrate, like visual impairment, intellectual disability, and also those who may be having mental disability. Honorable Speaker, while I was coming to this House to debate on this particular motion, I interacted with a few leaders of persons with disability from Disabled Person Organization of and for persons with disability nationally and internationally, and they told me to come to the Tiol of Parliament and say to Honorable Mishi, together with the Tiol of Parliament, that thank you so much. We may not have gold, we don't have silver or any flower or any gift to give you, but they gave me a basket full of blessing for Honorable Mishi and the Tiol of Parliament. Thank you very much. God may bless you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I do support.
Very well. The Honorable Olwach Tom, member for Mathare.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I want to join Honorable Songkok for recognizing that Honorable Mishi, herself not a person with disability, has done well to bring this motion, and also to say that there are persons such as Honorable Songkok who are not born disabled, and so that means that anybody can be disabled. I am one such person, Mr. Speaker, and this I say in the context of temporary disability. And this is one thing that brings you to the realization of the difficulty that persons with disabilities go through. Mr. Speaker, there are very basic things that even going to the toilet or even being able to take a shower, that at the age of 49, I had to take a shower through the aid of a nurse. And you can imagine how much that does to the dignity of a man. So this motion, Mr. Speaker, is very important. And in supporting the motion, I just want, because this matter has kept coming again, there is the issue that direction had been given about, and then the question has come again as to whether this motion seeks to do something that is unconstitutional or at variance. And I just remembered, Mr. Speaker, that questions of substance or the misdescription of a title should not distract us from the substance of this motion. Mr. Speaker, you will remember when we debated the 2018-2019 appropriation bill, which then was passed into an act, there was a question as to whether the motion was properly before this House by misdescription of an act that was either archaic or had not been used for about 50 years. And the Speaker, with the guidance of members such as Honorable Kimunya, the House was properly guided and we were able to go to the substance of the Committee of Supply and we dealt with it. So I ask that we look at the substance of what Honorable Mishi has brought and not the technicalities therein. My second point is that as we urge this motion, this House should also consider that adequate funding and financing is very key. We may be able to establish special units in these various primary or secondary school, but unless they are backed with proper funding that is anchored in programs that have continuity, we will be able to expose these persons to funding that either dries up after some time and they've been able to get used to it, or funding that is intermittent, the way we have heard about free primary, textbooks appear one time, the next time there are no textbooks, and these will be able to expose these vulnerable people in a manner that we don't want. In terms of the learning facilities and access, I've spoken about things like toiletry. We should think very clearly, how do these children
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Let me take this opportunity to congratulate the Honorable Mishi for bringing this very timely motion. Honorable Speaker, as it was also said by one of the honorable member who was just seated here, that we already have the regulations pertaining the issue of integration of these schools. I want to say, indeed, we have. So far in this country, we have about 97 special schools, that is the integrated both primary and secondary. But I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that the main challenge that we are facing in this country is the issue of the materials or the assistive devices. We also have lack the issue of the teachers. We also have the issue of the infrastructures that is the washrooms, even the structures where they are supposed to be learning. And it becomes a problem, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to congratulate Honorable Member and to urge the government that they move with speed in terms of really actualizing this issue of integration in all the primary schools and the secondary schools that we have around, because we have a number of students or pupils who are still locked in their houses and they are not able to access the education. Bearing in mind, Honorable Speaker, that it is also difficult for them to walk a distance, and it means, Honorable Speaker, that it would have been prudent for the government to make sure that at least they provide boarding facilities so that at least once in a while they can be in their homes, and while they are in schools, at least they are given full attention. Otherwise, Honorable Speaker, I don't want to say much, but I just want to say that I support the motion. Thank you.
The Honorable Jane Kihara, member for Naivasha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to thank Honorable Mishi for bringing up a motion which is very dear to my heart. Mr. Speaker, there is a reality that we have a problem in this country, and we as leaders are the ones now who are approached by people who need these facilities or who need our help. Mr. Speaker, in the 9th Parliament, I put up a facility for disability. We call it DRIC. DRIC is Disability Resource Information Center. It is there, it is working, where people come to get the resource they need. Unfortunately, it didn't take up with the vibe that I would have wished to when I left office. I've come back. At the present time, Mr. Speaker, during Easter, you know, we organized an Easter half marathon to fundraise for disability.
Our government to be very serious and committed to support children with special need, particularly their facilities, the kind of resources that they put into special education programs, Mr. Speaker. When we do not have any budget line for a special education program, then how do those children compete equally with the children who are in normal schools, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, resourcing and financing a special education program is something that is a responsibility and it's a right.
Honorable members, this motion began at 11:46. It is expected to last for 2 hours. It is now 1 p.m. It therefore remains with a balance of 46 minutes, which will be up the next time the motion is set down on the, yeah? And the honorable member for Ijara, you will have 2 minutes when it is next set down for deliberation. Honorable members, the time being 1 p.m., this House stands adjourned till today, Wednesday, 8th August 2018, at 2:30 p.m.